Hi, kindergarten writers. Welcome to Writer's Workshop. We are ready to start a new unit about poetry. But first, I have to give you a very huge compliment because you did an amazing job with persuasive writing. Persuasive writing is something that big kids do, and you did a beautiful job. All the kindergarten teachers were amazed at what a great job you did being very convincing with your work. So we want you to know that we are so proud of how hard you worked during persuasive writing. And I'm excited to start poetry with you. Now I know that a lot of you know what poetry is, and maybe you've even written some poems of your own. So this will be fun. We're going to talk about poetry a little bit, and then we're going to do some writing. You ready to get started? So the first question says, what is poetry? Poetry is a collection of words that express an emotion. That means a feeling, how we feel. Sometimes an idea, and sometimes with a specific meaning, sound, or rhythm. So a lot of the time when we think of poetry, we think of rhyming poetry. And that is what we're going to learn a little bit about later today. Now we're going to start with a story, and this is called Daniel Finds a Poem. And in this story, we're going to learn that poems are all around us. I think you're going to like this story.
Daniel Finds a Poem by Micah Archer. Daniel knows all the rocks, trees, and animals in the park. On Monday morning, Daniel sees something new on the park gate. A sign reads, "Poetry in the Park, Sunday at 6 o'clock." "What is poetry?" Daniel says. He looks up in surprise when he hears Spider say, "To me, poetry is when morning dew glistens." On Tuesday, Daniel climbs the old oak tree. He sees Squirrel. "Squirrel, do you know what poetry is?" "Poetry is when crisp leaves crunch," Squirrel tells him. On Wednesday, Daniel calls into Chipmunk's hole. "Chipmunk, can you tell me what poetry is?" Poetry? Poetry is a home with many windows and an old stone wall. On Thursday, Daniel makes a boat with a leaf for a sail and watches the wind carry it across the pond. He calls quietly to Frog. "Excuse me, Frog, what is poetry?" "Poetry," says Frog, "is a cool pool to dive into." On Friday, Daniel parts the cattails and finds Turtle. "Hello, Turtle. I have a question. Do you know what poetry is?" "I think poetry is a sun-warmed sand," Turtle says. On Saturday afternoon, Daniel finds Cricket in the shade of the slide. When the shadows are long, Cricket fills the air with music. "Is this poetry to you, Cricket?" "Sing at twilight when the day is done? Indeed it is, Daniel." That night, moonlight fills Daniel's room. He hears a whoo. Leaning from his window, he calls to Owl. "Owl, what is poetry?" "Oh, poetry. Poetry is bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go. Good night, dear Daniel," she whispers, and flies off into the night. On Sunday, the sun wakes up Daniel. He is happy when he remembers it's Sunday. "Today is poetry in the park," says Daniel, "and I have a poem." Morning dew glistens, crisp leaves crunch, There's a home with many windows in the old stone wall. Cool pools to dive in, sun-warmed sand to lie in, singing at twilight when the day is done. Bright stars in the branches, moonlight on the grass, and silent wings to take me wherever I go. On the way home, Daniel stops to watch the sunset sky reflecting in the pond. That looks like poetry to me. To me too, says Dragonfly.
Did you like that story? That story shows us that poems can be anything. We're going to learn a lot about poems that rhyme, poems that have that rhythm, and poems that are silly and fun. But a poem doesn't have to rhyme all the time. It doesn't have to be just a certain way. So poetry can be many different things. There are many types of poems. We are going to do about 5 of these until the end of the school year. We're going to learn about an acrostic poem. That's a poem where the first letters of each line spell out a word. ABC poems are kind of the same as that. We're going to learn about autobiographical poems. That's a poem about your very own self. A ballad is a poem that's written to tell a story. A cinquain poem is a 5-lined poem, and it is very scripted of how it has to be. A color poem uses colors to express feelings. Diamante is an unrhymed poem. And a haiku, that's a type of poem that has certain lines have to have a certain amount of syllables. A limerick is a funny poem that has a pattern to it. Rhyming poems, we're going to read about those and practice writing those. Those are poems that have rhyme. Shape poem, we're going to make one of those as well. That's a poem that is about an object and it's written in the shape of that object. And then an ode, it's kind of a lyric poem about a specific person or place. So those are the types of poems. Today, we are going to be working about rhyming poems. So rhyming words are words that sound the same at the end. I know in kindergarten we've been talking a lot about rhyming words. Read these with me. Cat, bat. What's the same in both of the words cat and bat? Yeah, they both have A, T. And when we put that sound together, they both say at. Cat, bat. Look at the next one. Can you read it with me? Dig, wig. Yeah, do you hear ig in each word? Sometimes kindergartners get confused and they think that rhyming words have the same sound at the beginning. They don't. They have the same sound at the end of the word. Look at this one. Crash, splash, funny, bunny. Let's check out a few poems that use rhyme. I hope you'll help me read this one. I think you know all the words in it. The fat cat. I had a cat who was so fat he could not even sit on his mat. He had a hat that did not fit. He put it on and then it split. Look at that tiny hat on that cat. Now I want you to notice, does every single line rhyme? Let's look. Cat, fat, that rhymes. Even, mat. So the word even doesn't rhyme. But when I put it in a poem, not every single line has to rhyme. I also want you to notice that when you write a poem, not every line is the end of a sentence. I had a cat who was so fat. That's one sentence, but it took 2 lines. So sometimes in poetry, our punctuation and capitalization at the beginning and the end, we have to think about where our sentence ends, not necessarily where that line ends. Let's check out another rhyming poem. I like this one. Now this one you're going to notice It has the words highlighted that rhyme. I bet you've heard this poem before. Can you read it with me? I have a little frog. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water. He gobbled up the soap. And when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. Look at those rhyming words. Look at the punctuation at the end. Okay, see some commas in this story and some periods. I do see capital letters at the start of each line. Now, shh. If your mom is sitting by you, tell her go away for a few minutes so we can do a surprise. Did you know that on Sunday it's Mother's Day? Did you buy your mom a present yet? We thought it might be fun to write a poem for our mom. So don't tell her, but we're going to write her a poem. And then when you're done, you can fix it and fancy it up, make some decorations on there, whatever you want so that you can give it to Mom. You can give it to her today if you want, or you can save it for Mother's Day. Now, I did a couple examples, and I want us to think about where those rhyming words are, where the end of our sentences are, and where a punctuation is. So let's listen for the rhyme in this story as I read it. My mom is the best, from her head to her toes. She's warm and she's soft and smells sweet like a rose. Do you see my rhyming words? Toes, rose. Now if you look, my first line and my third line, 1, 2, 3, 4, these two don't rhyme, do they? But the second line and the fourth line do rhyme. You'll notice that a lot in the poems that we do. The two lines rhyme and the other two don't. Here's one more. I love my mom. My mom is the best. She can ace any test. My mom is so sweet. I even love her stinky feet. That's kind of silly, isn't it? Now look at the rhyming words in this one. Best, test, sweet, feet. And then they all have capital letters, but they don't all have punctuation. That's kind of the fun part of poetry, is you get to decide if the beginning of your line is the beginning of your sentence or not, and if that capital letter goes there or not. So now it's your turn to write a poem for Mom. So first, think of some things you like about your mom. And then write those down. And then try to think of some words that could rhyme with that. So if you're going to talk about Mom being sweet, maybe treat or feet could rhyme with that. If you're going to say that your mom is kind, mind, find, grind. Okay, so think about some rhyming words. Remember that when we put this into sentences, not every line has to rhyme. Okay? Your poem can be silly or sweet. It can even be about her feet. I know she's going to love it. Have a great day, kindergarten writers. I'm excited to hear about your poems.